Good evening, guys. It is Tuesday, January 14th, 2024. This is Bathrobe Business. I'm Georgi Oganov. Although this may become night robe news, one of our commenters, someone who watched this channel, recommended that in my previous video. I really like that name. I might go with that. So shout out to them. I don't know if I'm supposed to say names. I don't know. But in the previous video, they commented, "Thank you. That's a great name." So maybe this channel will be changing names very quickly. So we're back today. I've got a number of stories to jump into, so I'm just going to jump right into it. The first one is a follow-up from what we talked about yesterday. So LA wildfires, even though the fires are mostly contained, however, there is a new fire starting right now. It's being called the Auto Fire. I think it's further away from the city than the previous fires were, but there is high wind, so there's chance of this spreading. So far, I think it's semi-contained, but just something on the horizon that should be of concern. Now, this is a very interesting story because I talked about yesterday about inflation, and it's happening very, very quickly. So this inflation is in the form of rental units for residents of LA County. So people are scrambling to find places to live as their homes have been burned down. Obviously, that's not a surprise. However, what is concerning is the amount of increase that they are facing. So there's multiple people in this article being highlighted. One person has a 4-bedroom home in LA that they are now renting or attempting to rent for $29,000 per month. That's up nearly 86%. Another person in this article is talking about rents going up by $1,100 from where they were just in October. So people are facing major housing issues in an area that's already had housing issues to begin with. There's no question about the unaffordability of LA County. That's existed for a while, but part of that unaffordability was always steeped in the fact that there was never enough housing being built. And so this is now coming home to roost. A lot of these residents are scrambling. They're staying with friends, families, hotels, but that's not sustainable. They're looking for a permanent residence, and it's going to be probably getting worse before it gets better. Now, this article is talking about price gouging. Now, I don't like that term. Obviously, I know how people think about price gouging. I do have a much more libertarian streak than most. I don't think you could say something as price gouging if it's the going rate of the market. I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that. They're like, "Oh, it's a crisis situation. You shouldn't take advantage of it." I don't believe it's taking advantage of it. If you're an owner, a landlord in Los Angeles, you are probably working in the most difficult climate in the United States. I think possibly the world. I mean, housing in any type of business in Los Angeles County is incredibly difficult. You are facing immense pressure, immense taxes. You have no real eviction power. Anytime you can try to stay afloat, you need to take it. And so in this scenario, even though I don't like the idea of people getting ripped off, I think it's understandable given the climate that exists in Los Angeles, especially since if I own a home in Los Angeles and I'm able to rent it out and somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I'll give you $500 more if you rent it to me." Am I going to say no? I think anyone in their right mind will say, "Okay, yeah." And then somebody else will come and say, "Hey, oh, that guy's giving you 500, I'll give you 1,000. That's how these prices generally work. It's a bidding market. Everybody always tries to sell whatever product they have at the most highest value that they can get for it. So when people say, "Oh, there's price gouging going on," that's simply supply and demand. I know nobody likes to hear that, but that's simply how it is. And we don't know the situations going on with a lot of these people in why they need to sell something at a higher price, because they may have lost money within this fire. They may have had other businesses that they had that they now do not have revenue streams from. So before people start throwing around the idea of price gouging, I think the market is the market. And if they can sell it for that much, they will. And if they can't, then they can't. But I don't like this policing that I'm not surprised happens in LA. There is like a victim line that if you think you're a victim of price gouging, you can refer to, I guess, Fiona Aston. I think that's who is. No, I'm sorry. That was one of the agents. It was somewhere in this article, but it talked about how you can refer to a helpline that the person that is accused of price gouging can be prosecuted. I'm not surprised that exists in LA. Like I said, I'm against it. I don't think that it's a way that an economy can function. People sell products for as much as they can sell them for. Now, that's kind of the major story coming out of LA so far. But I want to highlight one other thing, and that's insurances. So this is just going to be interesting. If anybody is, I'm not shorting this, I'm not investing in this. I got to make sure that I'm sharing the screen properly. But I'm just sharing this as information, and I have to make sure.
I created the world's largest.
So it's talking about insurance exposures in LA County. So, not surprising, State Farm is the highest insurer. We've talked about, well, I guess I haven't talked about it, but it's been said pretty prevalently in the news. I'm not sharing the article. I always do that. There we go. That State Farm is the largest insurance carrier in LA County. A lot of them drop policies. A lot of people I know will come after State Farm for that as well. I think this falls entirely on LA County. Again, very libertarian approach, but State Farm dropped this issue, dropped these policies because of the level of risk that was associated with the area. So they could clearly see the writing on the wall. Some of these areas had already in this the forest areas up against the mountains had already had major fires in 2018. There was already talk about mismanagement with the fire services, with the water services. So all State Farm was doing was looking at this plain to see picture and saying, look, we can't carry insurance here. And they dropped those policies. This should have been the warning sign for LA County to get their stuff together. This happened. I've heard varying numbers. I've heard everything from 2 months to 8 months. But despite what the time period was, the writing was clearly there that this was a major issue, and LA County just dropped the ball on this. But this article is just talking about that. So State Farm is the most at risk right now with $2.7 billion in underwritten premiums. So they're definitely going to be seeing a bad quarter. I think Liberty Mutual is next. Farmers is next, followed by Liberty Mutual. So those three are going to be facing probably the most difficult quarter of their lives because the amount of loss they're going to potentially face is going to be astronomical. Next story I'm going to talk about. I'm going to touch on inflation for a little bit. So today we got kind of conflicting numbers. So I'm first going to share with you guys my favorite indicator, as usual, gold. So gold edged up because they say the PPI prices were better than expected, which is true. PPI, producer price index, this is the cost of manufactured goods, rose at only 3.3% versus the anticipated 3.4%. But if we dive into the core of the inflation, it gets a little bit more hairy. So this article goes into depth on this, and it does it pretty well. It talks about core PPI and how specifically services are up in that regard. And it's actually ahead of where it was last year. So December 2023 to December 2024, it actually went up to 4.03%. So a subsection of the PPI inflation number. That's not a great sign because, again, these are often tied to wages, and that's the inflation that can be very, very sticky. That's not something that can be alleviated with supply chains. So even though the number is better than anticipated, a subset of the number is actually pretty bad. I'm sorry, it seems like I'm losing my voice, but I might just be a little dehydrated. Now, tomorrow we're going to get CPI numbers. The market is anticipating a fairly good number. But I don't want to speak too much of it because we don't have those numbers yet. But I think tomorrow's number is going to be a powerful indicator of if we're going to get rate cuts anytime soon. I don't think we will. But if tomorrow they come out with an amazing CPI number, there may be some chatter in the market. And I think you may see a bump in the market based off of the fact that low CPI will motivate people to think that the Fed is going to cut. I don't think given the Fed signaling that's going to happen, but I think a lot of the people in the market will react that way if we see a good CPI number. Also, by the way, I didn't mention gold did edge up because of the inflation numbers. So gold, I believe, is currently at 2668. It went from 2668 to 2682. So it did edge up a little bit. But we are off from the all-time highs that we saw back pre-election. It was pre-election that we were seeing those very strong 2,700 numbers. Next story I'm going to mention is just a quick one in passing, because I think this is possibly a very good investment for this next year. I haven't invested in this yet, but Meta has announced another 5% cut in preparation for an intense year. This is going to touch on something that I've kind of been mulling around talking about on this channel, but since I haven't really been on the platform that much, I haven't really had the chance to articulate it. And yesterday's video was focused primarily on the fires. So we are facing the imminent ban of TikTok. I think a lot of these platforms, our American social media companies, are anticipating that it's going to happen. I know there's chatter that Elon Musk may end up buying it. Could be another company that ends up buying it. It could be that TikTok restructures. But given some of the actions that Mark Zuckerberg has been taking, I think it's forecasting a pretty aggressive stance that he believes, or at least maybe he knows, that that's not going to happen. Now, I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg is right or not. I do know he has access to a wealth of information and to a lot of more politicians than I do. Given all of his moves in recent weeks, I think he's poised to position himself to take back social media that I think he lost a substantial amount when TikTok kind of hit the market. He's done Joe Rogan. He did those major announcements. He's doing these cuts. He's restructuring the entire censorship platform that Meta essentially had. This is probably the most, I would say this is the most ambitious undertaking he's taken in a long time. I know a lot of people will bring up, well, what about the metaverse? What about his Llama AI stuff? That's all great and flashy. I think that's something that moves the needle on the stock price, but I don't think that affects major operations. Whereas this, I think he's definitely restructuring for major operational changes and for massive expansion in the market. So I wouldn't be surprised that after the cut comes, after the company is restructured, he's going to try to usurp the TikTok throne through one measure or another. Now, I don't know how he's going to do that yet, because Instagram clearly is not TikTok. Threads has definitely not competed with Twitter. But I think he is buckling down to be more aggressive in a way that he hasn't been in the last several years. Partly also because I believe of regulation. Every time he kind of tried to make inroads with something new, he was facing major headwinds from regulators, some of which regulators I like Lena Khan. But even so, he was facing major headwinds when he announced Meta. There was a lot of pushback when he announced his own it was I don't want to call it a meme coin, but it was a cryptocurrency. He was facing major pushback on that. He got a lot of criticism for his AI. So I think with this new administration coming in and potentially TikTok coming out, we could see rapid growth in what Meta does. I don't think this is a trade. I think this is a real investment quarter to quarter, but it's just something to consider. I don't know if I'm going to pull the trigger on it quite yet. I think I will wait to see what happens on January 19th. That's the deadline. But I think potentially, if TikTok gets banned, I think Meta's a buy. I think Meta's definitely a buy. Last story I'm going to talk about is just a kind of a fun story. This is the 2025's best performing cities. I don't know how it's a prognosis, the prognosis so far into the future, seeing as how it's only 14 days into 2025, but Utah is on there twice. So Ogden, Utah and Salt Lake City, Utah are on there. This is kind of a puff piece. It doesn't really go into reasons why we're such a great city. It talks about the Silicon Slopes in Salt Lake City. It also talks about the fact that housing has improved greatly in Ogden, become more affordable. So it mentions those in passing, but not a powerful analysis. But hey, that's great. Anytime we can shout out to it, that's fantastic. I think, obviously, I live and reside in Salt Lake City. I think it's a great city. I think Ogden is poised to actually see some major changes. If we have one or two good developers coming into Ogden, could change that city drastically. I think it has the potential to become kind of the Brooklyn to Salt Lake City's New York. Me and my fiance last year did a little weekend trip for Ogden. It was like a staycation. And I think the city is actually kind of a silent sleeper, like a sleeping dragon that could become something very powerful if the right people come in and develop a lot more recreation there. That's pretty much it. A little bit longer video than usual, but hey, I'm still coming back to it. I hope you guys have a productive Wednesday, and I will see you tomorrow evening. Bye.